Welcome again to another presentation that's similar to the last one I provided. You can see my YouTube page if you want to check that out. That was for LT1, the aerobic threshold, and it was done by our running outdoor test. Did that as a trail run, so I think that was interesting for just verifying your aerobic threshold and trying to triangulate uh, your RPE, your perceived exertion, your power and heart rate, and how that can be useful for improving pacing. Well, if we take that up one level, we can do that at LT2, our anaerobic threshold, for the same sort of purpose to improve pacing, our ability to triangulate these three metrics and maybe adjust if we need to based on the result of your own testing. So I'll read this like I did the last time, and then we'll get into a little bit more of the commentary. So pacing with a bike power meter. Triathletes benefit by being able to correlate power, heart rate, and perceived exertion while cycling. Power is an external metric that correlates loosely with pacing on the bike within a given athlete. You increase power and pace will increase if all other factors are somewhat fixed because we have more of a issue with the wind, the terrain, and the aerodynamics. Those factor in quite heavily to how your power translates to speed on the bike. Heart rate and perceived exertion are internal metrics. A good starting point is to sync these three key metrics. So once again, it doesn't take a computer to determine perceived exertion. We ask the question, how does the current intensity / power feel? Your next question then should be, does the current power and heart rate align with how you feel? Again, trying to bring those three together. So realize that how you feel is influenced by fatigue. Early in a session, once you're properly warmed up, usually these power targets can be hit pretty easily. If you're not too tired from prior workouts or maybe even the workday that was prior. But later in the session, we build up internal heat, we can have fatigue creep in, and as we progress longer and longer, we still have fatigue weighing in heavier and heavier. So the thing I brought up the last time, and it applies to bike power too, is your FTP isn't the same hour number 1 versus hour number 2 versus hour number 3. Even if you're doing zone 2 and you're thinking that 70% is correct, that 70% of a FTP, that's maybe 250. That's fine. You're at whatever that power works out to be. Let's just call it 160. But the next hour, after a little bit of fatigue and a little bit of internal heat buildup, you might be down to an FTP of 240. And so you drop your wattage 10 watts and it feels about the same. The heart rate might be about the same, that zone 2 control. And in the third hour, you might need to do the same. Think about your FTP going down another 10 watts. Your power decreases another 10 watts. Now, again, this is heavily influenced by how well trained you are and just how warm it is. Those are the two key factors. So anyways, let's work on better correlating these metrics, and to do that, I suggest the following test. So what I did, and I felt it was helpful, I think it's something that any one of you can do for a zone 4 workout, is the anaerobic threshold test. So it's a setup notes for this one. Lap and current power must be displayed on the watch or the bike computer. Heart rate must be on a second screen or the main screen if the watch allows or the bike computer. Find a safe and stop-free road loop that ends up taking about 15 minutes to complete. Start test at a moderate intensity. I'll call that Olympic power, probably upper zone 3, low zone 4. Hold that lap power at this low zone 4 power and route it to the nearest 5 watts. Increase each lap by 5 to 10 watts for lap power. Monitor heart rate occasionally each lap. End the test once the heart rate exceeds lactate threshold heart rate for more than a few seconds. And hopefully you know that number well. It's entered into Training Peaks. It's something that my athletes would have established by prior testing. So, okay, let's dive into the test procedure. Again, a little redundant, but worth restating. Warm up in zone 1, 2 for 15 minutes or so, finishing on the test course start location. Push the lap button at lap start. Maintain your low zone 4 power closely, and it's best to round to the nearest 5 watts. Monitor that lap power throughout the lap and fluctuate your current power as needed, with minimal variation as a secondary goal. So again, we have a lap power for a low zone 4 of 230 watts, and we see that the lap power halfway through is at 225. That's fine. Just slowly creep up that power, go a little bit over 230 to bring it up to 230, so that when you finish, you're really close to that target. And for this target, I'm using the example of 230. Push the lap button at the end of the first lap, easy spin for 3 to 5 minutes, call it zone 1. Find a little safe place where you can go out and turn around, come back to the starting line. And then the next time you're going to increase that power by 5 to 10 watts for the lap. And then every lap thereafter, you'll do the same until you can no longer maintain your threshold heart rate. You see that you're went over the threshold, and you can't bring it down while you're trying to do that power output that was required for that particular lap. So let's go through my example. Training peaks data with a little bit of WKO to add color. So my data from the WKO5 is shown on this page along with training peaks. And you can see that, well, I did this on a road loop with some hills. It was the Lakeshore course. It kind of shows that it's easy enough to use your power to control the intensity and hit the average lap power output that you're shooting for. You just got to monitor current power and lap power and adjust as needed. So my key takeaways. My lactate threshold heart rate's 158, and that was exceeded on lap number 3 for a few seconds, even though effort was well controlled. And my perceived exertion correlated very well. I felt like I was going over the edge. Now again, for your anaerobic threshold, that's going to feel different than your aerobic threshold. Your aerobic threshold, when you go over, you go from being able to talk in full sentences, you're breathing, but it's rhythmic, to maybe just a little bit harder. You feel like you have to stay a little bit more focused to keep that intensity. You feel like you could probably talk, but be more like broken sentences. You can have a conversation well, but it's just tipping over. That's your aerobic threshold. Anaerobic threshold is zone 4. So when you go to the red zone, there's not talking involved with this one. You can't even think straight. You're kind of focused in on just hitting the power or maybe exceeding it, but it's more of a minute by minute. You need to think, you need to concentrate, you need to focus, and your focus will be very much like tunnel vision. So you can feel the difference when you get to that threshold. Heart rate is coming up so high that you can feel that pounding. Your breathing gets to be a little out of control when you tip over anaerobic threshold. So that's the feeling you're looking for. So again, my anaerobic threshold for this test was 288 watts. That correlates pretty well with my current FTP. And this is valid for somewhat warm conditions. It was 77 degrees that day, and I was feeling somewhat recovered. I still had the current workout and yesterday's workout in my legs, so that had some fatigue. Lap number 2, my intensity factor was 0.95, so that means it's 95% of my FTP, and that's my standard for doing an Olympic pace triathlon. Lap number 4 was 0.97 for IF. That would be an aggressive pace for an Olympic distance triathlon, probably a little reaching. And lap number 6, the IF was 1.03, and that would be the pace I would hope to achieve on a very good day for a 1-hour time trial. Again, might be a little bit of a stretch. So another takeaway is the speed difference from lap number 2 to lap number 6, which again correlates to my first effort of 0.95 to my second effort of 1.03 IF. So again, this was my Standard Olympic pace versus my all-out 1 hour time trial. Don't need to run after that effort. That difference is only 0.7 miles per hour, but it took 23 more watts and it took 18 beats per minute more to achieve. So the question gets to be, is that too high of a price for saving 2 minutes in an Olympic distance bike? And my answer is yeah, it is if you're doing triathlon, if it affects your run negatively, and you need to test that out. But if you're willing to pay that price, it might be worth it. It's definitely worth it to me when I'm doing a 1 hour time trial. You know, the true test of, I guess, a cyclist that is trying to be aerodynamic and trying to get under 1 hour for a time trial. That's a goal that a lot of cyclists have had. If you're going to do that, you need to bring your A game. You need to push your effort to the absolute maximum, and you're going to need to do that effort of 1.01, 1.02, 1.03 IF. It's going to take that sort of effort. Um, so anyways, hopefully this helps. You can see my color coding in WKO for some yellows. That means I'm getting into that threshold zone. Yellow and orange, a little bit more into the threshold zone for effort number 2, which was about 15 minutes. And effort number 3, you see almost solid yellow, more oranges and reds, and a couple of high peaks of reds. That was me accelerating out of turns and being aggressive. So that's kind of the difference between a standard Olympic pace, a high Olympic pace, and then a full-on effort for a 60-minute TT. But remember, these were only for 15 minutes each for this test. So I hope that's interesting. I hope that helps you. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for tuning in. Hopefully I'll see you again soon.